Hello, we are live here on this Biohack Whack Wednesday. My name is Scott Stanfield, and this is the show is It's My Friday. And gosh, like most of us here in America, we had to turn my phone off for a second. We've got this election hangover. We stayed up really late watching to see how it was going to all unfold with the presidential election in our local state and county election. So I just want to welcome you to the show and let you know I was up late last night, and so therefore I've got to put some things in play today to guard against a couple of things when you go with a lack of sleep. One of those being hunger cravings, right? So you're going to be hungrier during the day. You're going to want more coffee, which is going to ignite your digestive system and make you hungrier as well. So your hunger hormone is going to be turned on. Your ghrelin, your leptin's going to be, which is one that says the hormone that says that you are full, is going to be turned off. You're going to be dehydrated because you didn't sleep as well, so you need to drink more water. And you're also going to be a little cranky. So be guarded on your emotional intelligence and your temper and those type of things. And so just be guarded. And if you want to learn more about how to get the best sleep or the sleep of your dreams, I wrote this book called Outstanding Landing: How to Get the Sleep of Your Dreams, and you can get that at my website at sleep.strongforlonger.com. sleep.strongforlonger.com, and that'll take you right to the page where you can download this for free. Just it costs you your email, and it'll help you get the sleep of your dreams. And it has 7 different ways of doing that. Now today's show is going to be really cool because I titled this as Keto is not a 6-day challenge. I've seen 6-day challenges, 28-day challenges, and I just kind of, keto can be a short run, but it also can be something like this where it is a lifestyle. Now, I've been keto for almost 5 years, and when I first listened to Dom DeAnnastigo on the Tim Ferriss show, it was actually 5 years ago this month in November, and it took me till January before I actually started the diet, because it was a commitment. It was a lifestyle. There's other factors that came into play that made me started craving fat. And because I'd done the research on the diet, I knew that I needed to move to a ketogenic lifestyle and test that. And this has been an ongoing test for me for a long time. Now I'm on record saying that I've lost 40 pounds twice, but it's actually been more than that I've yo-yoed with my diet. When I got into the restaurant business back in 1994, I was a PE student and double majoring in athletic training. And I was 5'10", 21 years old, weighed 157 pounds soaking wet. I was in really good shape, walked to every class, and had game classes, but beach volleyball was great, right? Beach volleyball, educational games, running around with all these former athletes and stuff. And so it was really, really cool thing. And I gained that one summer, my first summer in the restaurant business, went up to 185 pounds. And how I combated that was I started going to the gym, lifting heavy weights, doing bodybuilding type things. I was squatting like 415 pounds and, 10 reps, 3 sets. I mean, I was super strong. And I was doing the Atkins diet, which is a modified ketogenic diet. And I did really well on it. And but one thing I didn't understand then, and this episode is going to be firmly deep in pillar number 5, which is F3: food, fasting, and feasting. And for me, it works for me. And I'm not saying, and you saw this as informational purposes, this is what works for me. I'm not telling you to go out and start a ketogenic diet. Now, what I want you to understand is that worked for me. Hitting those heavy weights at the time, being that young, and going into a low carb diet, that worked really good. And then I yo-yoed. I switched over at some point. I gained weight. Then my parents got cancer. I even gained more weight from that point. I became a vegetarian and a pescatarian for 10 years. And then I ended up keeping the weight off 2 more times after going through P90X once and 1.5 times. I kept it off through intermittent fasting. And so intermittent fasting is really the cornerstone to my weight loss and maintaining the weight that you see today. I call keto and intermittent fasting the dynamic duo. They work really well together. Now, but you can be in ketosis and eat a carbohydrate-based diet or be a carb burner. And you can do that. And that's proven, right? I lost weight by doing a 20-hour fast. Kevin Rails, who's in the fasting documentary, who's been on the Modern Longevitarian podcast and he's been live on this show as well. And he goes into ketosis every day and he fasts for 16 hours, right? It's just about your amount of movement and being metabolically flexible, which is really your ultimate goal. And I get to that later. But, what happens in a 6-day period, a 6-day challenge of doing keto? Now, there's some good things that can come from that. You can get some ketones produced by your liver and your body and burn some fat. You can do that. And in the first 6 days, you'll feel like a superhero. You'll lose about 5 pounds of water weight. And that's super cool too. But on day 7, if you go back to what you were eating, you're just going to gain that water weight fast. And I can see where somebody's like, hey, I'm getting ready for a wedding or going to the beach or a vacation. And I want to slim down a little bit to look better in these pictures, where that might be a way that you might hack that. But I think that ketogenic or a low carb diet is more of a lifestyle, or at minimum a 90-day experiment. And it took me a long time to get into ketosis, and I felt like it took about 6 weeks before I actually arrived fully planted, where my body was over all the mental and physical cravings of food. And it took me a little bit to get there, right? To where I was like, okay, I'm able to really execute this lifestyle, this diet, day in and day out, without being pulled in one direction or the other. Now let's talk about, because there are multiple ways to get into ketosis, right? And keto lifestyle and eating a low carb diet versus being in ketosis can be two different things. They can be. I just want you to understand that they could be one and the same, because you can get into ketosis by fasting long enough, right? If you fast long enough, you're going to get into ketosis in less than a week's time, right? But if you are eating a low carb diet, it's going to take you longer to do that. There are 6 times as many nerves that run from your gut to your brain than there are from your brain down to your gut. So who's driving the bus here? It's your gut, right? So when you have cravings, it's your microbiota, your biome that is sending signals to your brain saying, hey, I want to eat this, right? And it may not be something that you actually need. It may be craving, because who needs that late night ice cream unless it's just for your soul, right? It may not be, because you don't need those extra calories to go to sleep. Your body can fast, right? That's why breakfast is called breakfast, because it's breaking your fast, right? And so because you're not eating over this time that you're sleeping, hopefully like 7 to 8, maybe 9 hours, depending on your sleep type and how much sleep you need and those type of things. So you don't need that large impact of calories. It actually impairs your sleep if you have it within 2 to 3 hours of going to sleep. I was just texting somebody about that just before this show. And that is the best way to go to sleep, is when you haven't had anything to eat within 2 to 3 hours of going to sleep. So you don't need those type of calories, that you may be craving, that late night dessert or sugar craving or those type of things. You just don't need it to go to sleep. That's more of a mental thing, or maybe your gut microbiome. So what happens is, what helped me get over the hump is that I had heard, listening to, and I did, obviously Dr. Dom D'Anastasio, we did a 3.5 hour long podcast with Tim Ferriss. I listened to all of that. And then I started doing research, and I stumbled upon Dr. Stephen Phinney. And Stephen Phinney, he set out in the 70s, and he's a cyclist. He's an MD at the time. Now he's got a PhD as well. He set out to prove Dr. Atkins wrong and proved himself wrong. Okay. So what he proved is that once people, and he actually coined several terms that we use in the keto sphere these days, one of them being fat adapted, right? And how long it takes to become fat adapted. And that's normally what he refers to as athletes. And it's used as in the same vein as keto adapted, right? So your body's producing ketones, your body's adapted to burning fat for fuel versus carbs for fuel. And I love his explanation, and I've used this multiple times, is that imagine that you're driving a truck across the country, and I'm referring to the United States because it's, over 2,000 miles across the continental U.S. And he said, if your engine runs off the diesel fuel in those tanks that are just before the rear tires, you'll have to stop several times across the country to refuel. But if you converted the engine to run off the jet fuel that's in the tanker truck, right, you could drive all the way across the country without stopping. So basically the diesel fuel is the carbohydrates. Your body can only store so many carbohydrates. That's why marathon runners hit the wall. They run out of carbohydrate-based fuel. And then what happens is their body's struggling to switch over metabolically into burning fat. So what happens is if you're fat adapted already or created this metabolic flexibility inside your body by cycling keto or being keto for a while, you can then your body can switch over a lot easier and do that, or convert over to burning fat. So what happens is that as this ketogenic diet started coming about, athletes were in the keto lifestyle, and they were beating super endurance records like 100-mile races, beating the records by up to 20 minutes. So it has its advantages on top of the cognitive boost, the mood boost, fat burning on your, like making your waistline smaller, those type of things. And also some people are doing lots of work to mitigate or suppress their type 2 diabetes stuff or disease that they have. And so there's several advantages to this. Now, what most people don't know, let's back up to the 1920s, is that the ketogenic diet was actually used with children who had epileptic seizures, and they were non-responsive to drugs, right? Because the ketones wash over the brain and help calm things down. That's where the cognitive piece and the mood elevation comes from, is the ketones pass through the blood-brain barrier, the blood-brain barrier. All right, so here we go. Here we are. I converted over to a ketogenic diet. I was craving sugar, and sugar cravings last for 21 days. That helped me get over the hump, right? So if you're going to do a 6-day challenge, you're not really going to get past this, I'm going to crave sugar, or the mental craving is like, I feel like I need to eat more meat, or I need to eat bread, or I want pizza. The kids are eating pizza. I want pizza. There's donuts at work. How do you get past those things? It's one of the things that people always ask me is like, Scott, how could you say no to this candy or these sweets, or, this leftover piece of cake, or it was left from Taste Plate, or, not eat macaroni and cheese or any of those things, because I don't crave those things. Right. But I had to slay those dragons over multiple years, right? Not just for keto, but I actually was, I had become a vegetarian and pescatarian and almost vegan. And then I ate meat again, doing the Weston A. Price diet. And then did intermittent fasting, right? It was still a carb burner when I intermittent fasted and lost all the weight. And then 4 years later, I converted it into keto. So I've done a lot of, cutting those dragons and getting those cravings out of my life, right? With that. So here I was November, flying back from South Carolina after all the floods had happened there 5 years ago, and listened to the podcast with Dom D'Anestigo and Tim Ferriss. And then I started doing the Wim Hof method at January, and started craving fat, started doing the ketogenic diet. Right. And then it took me 6 weeks where I felt like I truly had arrived and converted over to living a true ketogenic lifestyle. Now, if you've done your research and you've consulted your higher powers, like your doctors and dietitians and physician's assistants, and you've gotten cleared for ketosis takeoff, then I say commit not to 6 days, not to 28 days, but to 90 days to do a test. And that's what this Biohack Whack Wednesday really is I'm actually going over these tests that I've done on myself over the years. I've talked about the current ones that I've done, like 28 days of coffee enemas, or 28 coffee enemas in 29 days. I've talked about taping my mouth shut while I sleep. Right. I'm going to, at some point, I'm going to talk about this. This is an experiment. This is a jaws exercise. You put this thing in your mouth and you bite it down on it, and work on your face muscles, right? That's going to be something that I talk about at some point. So 90-day experiment. And last week I talked about the Wim Hof method and how these things, you should test this to see what works for you. In the vein of Bruce Lee, absorb everything, right? Keep what is useful, discard what is not, and make it uniquely your own. So that's how I've done breathing. I figured out there's 3 styles of breathing. There's the Wim Hof method. There's the 4x4 box breathing, which is a balanced breath. And then there's also Dr. Wheel's 4-7-8. So there's 3 categories of breathing, and you can shift your breathing into manual, and you can upshift. And I just did Wim Hof's. I did push-ups without breathing. I did these pseudo planche push-ups, 25 without breathing. I did 5 more after I took 3 breaths. So I did 30 push-ups before I got on this show, 25 of them without breathing, right? So do these tests and find what works for you. Keep what works for you and discard what doesn't, and then make your own system, right? Because you have agency in your genetic expression is what you really, really have. You are not held to or bound to the genes that were dealt to you by your mom and dad or by your family in any way. You are bound to those. You have influence over how your body expresses itself, and that's through the environment. There are 4 million different versions of you inside of you, and you can switch on or switch off these shifts by these switches by using these 8 pillars of being a modern longevitarian, right? And so you can do that. You have the power to do that over your own body, and I'm an example of that, right? Both of my parents got cancers in their 50s, and they're survivors. But what if it happens to me at 85, 95, and I move that out 3 decades, right? So that's what you have the power to do inside of you. And it starts with your mindset. Okay, you've gotten clear for takeoff. Now, 6 days is not long enough, right, to get the taste of or the true benefits of a lifestyle. Plus, if you do get into ketosis, you're going to lose those 5 pounds of water weight, then you're going to gain it right back, right? That's really what's going to happen. Now, there are some benefits. I can get into that later, but I'm just telling you, keto is not a 6-day challenge. It's not keto. That's a cleanse. The 6-day challenge is a cleanse, right? Because you're not making any lasting changes on your body or your mind if you're just doing it for 6 days and you never go back and do it again, right? You're like, okay, I've done it. The only thing you've done is a test to see if you can make it through one of those survival shows on TV, where if you're dropped into the middle of the woods and you have nothing but a knife and some paracord, and you got to make it out in 6 days, that you know that all you need is water to survive, and you know that you can switch into ketosis by fasting, and you're going to have an energy boost, you're going to have a mood boost, you're going to have protein sparing capabilities, your body's going to produce its own vitamin C and all these benefits, and your inflammation is going to go down to give you the energy to go find food and get back to safety. And once you get back to this developed world, then you can go foraging for carbs and do what you need to do. Don't spend time if you're dropped in the middle of the woods trying to get protein, because you don't need it, right? You need to get out of there and just drink some clean water on the way to where you're going, right? And so the goal is really to become metabolically flexible. That's really the goal. And that's what I've been, working on as well. Now, Tim Ferriss also said something, is that once you're in ketosis, it's easier once you're out to get back in. Your body has this muscle memory type thing where it remembers that you have, okay, I can burn fat as fuel. I can convert fat into ketones, and I can do that. So once you've been in it for a while, your body remembers that, and you can able to move between those. This is actually also called keto cycling, right? And so it's not healthy to stay in keto all the time. And so 18 months into me being keto, which was about 3 years ago, I decided that I wanted to test Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet, which is basically you have 30 grams of protein within 30 minutes of waking up. You have beans with every meal. And on 1 day a week, you have a 100% free cheat day. All right. And you can eat whatever you want. Whatever's on the not eat list, you can eat that. And I started doing that. I had pizza, and it didn't do well. Right? I'm too binary. I'm too like, you've got to do it one way or the other, right? And so the next Sunday I had a quesadilla, right? Wrecked me, right? Totally wrecked me. The third Sunday I had sushi, had white rice and all that stuff, and I was a lot better because I had less gluten. So I found out that because I'd done without gluten for 18 months, that gluten didn't sit so well with me as I was been keto for so long and gluten-free for so long. So I don't do any gluten now at all, not even in soy sauce or any of those type of things. And I don't eat bread now. And I make if we have bread, it's something we either buy Mikey's or the loaf that's made here in Salt Lake, or or we make our own bread, or keto bread. And so what I'm saying is that, but that helped me stumble onto this, what I now call a feast day, which is my way to softly cycle out of keto and to get back into keto. Now, next week, what I'm going to talk about is how I combine ketogenic diet and intermittent fasting, right? So to create metabolic flexibility, and includes a feast day in it. So I call it my Keto SS Super Sport, or Scott Stanfield 4-2-1. So 4 days of one style of fasting, 2 days of deeper fasting, and 1 day of feasting. And I'll cover that next Wednesday. So I figured that out this morning. That's what we're going to talk about. But while I'm breaking here, tomorrow's show is Laurie Nadeau. She's with Smoke and Mary, Bloody Mary Mix. Super excited to have her on the show. And I've met her years ago, and we stayed in contact. So I'm excited to have her on as a guest. And that's going to be a fun show. She's a ball of fire. So it's going to be a really cool one. So metabolic flexibility. So Sundays are feast days. That came from me testing this Tim Ferriss diet and understanding if keto really worked for me. And he had a cheat day and it didn't work for me. So then I created a feast day. And on feast days, I don't fast as long. I eat more carbohydrates like sweet potato. Occasionally I'll have some rice, maybe twice a year. I'll have some rice and really get out of ketosis. And then I focus on getting in ketosis on Monday and Tuesday, get back into there. So I'm back into ketosis. And I do that every 2 weeks, that I really have a true feast day. They get out of ketosis. Now, let's see here. What else did I say here? So what's my diet today, right? That's really a really good question. I get asked a lot, what about diet? Even I answered a podcast, not podcast, a Facebook group thing in another group about diet being 80% of weight loss and exercise being 20. And as you can see, I think that there's so many other things, if you look at the side of the page here, that are important to your health. So diet and exercise are not the 100% of the game. No. And actually food is, because we can fast for long, is not even close to being even the 80% that you talk about, right? Mindset, breathing, hydration, sleep are more important than food in a lot of ways. And movement is not as important, because movement is, but not exercise. Exercise is a supplement. But what does my diet look like today? I am 90% plant-based, or more in a lot of ways. And I'm influenced by the Blue Zone. Since I've been doing research and started the Model Longevitarian brand, I have been doing a lot more research on longevity diets. And so I'm influenced by the Blue Zones, which are all 90% or more plant-based, and the work of Dr. Victor Longo. And he has wrote a book called The Longevity Diet, and created a fasting mimicking diet, which I have done as well, which is 100% plant-based. And you got to buy the book or find that online. I also have behind me on the shelf here, Dr. Will Cole's book, Ketotarian, which is a plant-based keto diet. So I am, and the reason that I'm going more plant-based is not, the third reason is because fiber and how it fuels or feeds our microbiota, right? And how important that is for our health, right? Our gut health, because everything starts in the gut and then works its way outward from there. And so those are the things. And yes, do I eat meat? Yes, typically on Sundays. On my feast day, I'll have a little bit of meat on those days. And I may have a little bit of cheese, like I did a little bit last night, had cheese. And, I've noticed this, right? That if I'm even like stressed just a touch, right? My brain goes into my old way of thinking. I need to eat meat. I need some cheese. I need some protein. I need those type of things. But if I do this 4x4 balancing breath and get myself, connected back to my true self, then what happens is I'm like, no, I don't need that. Plants are where it's at. And so I can get back to that. So I am keto-ish. So I am on this. And what she said today, Dr. Mindy Peltz, I saw this post about, she said on Facebook, there's 4 levels of ketosis, right? There is so there's 4 levels of ketosis. The initial phase is just a light nutritional ketosis, right? So that's where I'm kind of at now. But when I fast longer, I go into this deeper ketosis. And then there's therapeutic ketosis, there's fasting ketosis. Those are so there's several different levels of ketosis, right? So there's not just one. So people can eat a paleo diet and be on this like light nutritional ketosis, be on the edge of it, right? And I think that's why people started adding carbs back to the keto paleo diet, especially like this paleo for athletes, because what happens is they were bordering on going into ketosis and their body wasn't going fully in, and so it was like this struggle, and they were, needed more height. They were going to the bathroom more, getting dehydrated, not really understanding what was happening, right? So being on this edge of ketosis and going in and out is metabolic flexibility. But unless you really are like this, keto ninja, and understanding where you're at, and you really understand listening to your body and what you need, that's a difficult place to be, right? So for me, it was easier to be in or out for years until I really understood what it felt like to be in and what it felt like to be out, right? And so now I can understand that. And now that I'm eating more carbohydrates, I know that when at some point during the day when I wake up in the morning, that I may not actually be in ketosis. I may still be burning some carbs that I had from the day before because I'm eating more plants, right? And I'm occasionally having a little bit of honey, which is, wow, it's really good for a guy who's been in ketosis, deep ketosis for a long time. So as you can see, my mindset around diet shifting, right? Because I'm looking at 50 years from now. I'm 48 years old. I'm looking at 98. I'm looking at how can I still be kicking it the way that I kick it right now, 50 years from now. So this long tail version of who Scott Stanfield is really influencing what I'm making today, right? So I posted just a couple of days ago that there may be an end to my ketogenic days because the good crisp company has created a non-GMO version of a Pringle. And that was one of my go-to foods back in the day when I was overweight. And so I say that jokingly because that's nothing that's really going to influence me to switch. I mean, it was a good thought, right? It was like, wow, right? This could really happen, right? But I'm not tempted by that. I'm not tempted by Krispy Kreme donuts, right? And I grew up going to the Hot Now sign Sunday afternoons with my family after church, right? It was like a big, big part of who we were as the Stanfields growing up in South Carolina. And I remember when they moved from North Main Street over to Gervais Street and moved across town. I remember that, right? Because we used to have to drive to a different part of Columbia over to West Columbia to get the donuts. And so my point is this, right? Your diet is going to change as your mindset and as your goals change, right? And you need to find what works for you because you're an individual. You're unique. I'm unique. Your gut is different because you've had a different round or you may not have ever had any antibiotics in your life, or you could have had multiple rounds of antibiotics, right? But what you've taken is different. What was passed down to you genetically is different than another person. The microbiome, each generation has a third less diversity than they did the previous generation, right? And so if you were born C-section like me, you may not have got a full download from mom through the vaginal canal because that's where the bacteria is downloaded into the baby, right? And so there could have been all these factors that end up making you unique, and your diet could be completely different or slightly different than what it is that works for one person and another. And your diet that works for you may not be the same with the people that live in the same house as you. My wife is more vegetarian than I am, and I'm 90% plant-based, so not right now, but more Mediterranean than I am. And I, for a long time, like eating more meat than she did, right? And even though I was vegetarian and pescatarian for 10 years. She juices more than I do. She has more carbohydrates than I do, and it works for her. And she finds what works for her, and I'm finding what works for me. And so we encourage our kids to find what worked for them as well. So what works for each person is different, right? It is totally different. I am a modern longevitarian after all, and so I practice what I preach here, which is all really works. All right. My cousin's here, Cindy. All right. Put her comment up there. Thanks for stopping in. And Cindy, she lives in New Mexico. We're both from South Carolina. And so we definitely, grew up not eating the best foods there were. And so thanks for joining in, Cindy. And let's see here. All right. I'm going to recap, and I'm going to wind this up. For getting into ketosis, there is no cheat days, right? There are no cheat days. It's not a 6-day challenge. That is unless you're super tight on your intermittent fasting, right? You can also get into keto if you fast, and you can, and you're metabolically flexible, right? Kevin Rail does that. I do that. I did that with when I first got into fasting 8.5 years ago. Okay. This is how, by testing Tim Ferriss's slow carb diet and his cheat day, I came up with feast days. And this is how I softly cycle from deeper ketosis into out of ketosis, or get up to that light nutritional ketosis level, and then getting back into deeper ketosis through fasting. Okay. I suggest that once you get clear for takeoff, that you actually do a 90-day test on everything that you do. Oh, AJ Camp, what's up? My old nickname from my racing days, when I raced for the Camp family. What's up, Standstill? So my name's Scott Stanfield. I have a tendency to move kind of slow, so Standstill fit at the time, right? For sure. Will I always be keto? No, I won't always be keto. If I go, once I go, not when, if, but when I go to Europe, I'm going to go to Paris, I'm having croissants. When I go to Italy, I'm having pasta. When I go to Japan, I'm going to have full on sushi, right? I'm going to experience those things. I'm going to experience different cultures. I do think that ketogenic diet works for our Western modern world really well, but I also think it needs to have a huge bend towards being plant-based, right? So carnivore diet is something that I have tested, and I can talk about that at future episode if people want to hear about it. But I don't see the benefits of that for me long-term, right? I just don't. It's a short-term run. It's an elimination diet. I understand how it helps people. It helped me in a lot of ways, but I learned from it, and then was able to tie that back into getting the proper amount of fiber that I needed for my gut. And but here's the thing. Will I always be keto? No, but I will always train my body to be metabolically flexible. And that's more important than any one particular diet that you can have. And that really will help you in life. Because if I decide today at 2:00 that I need to push through and go work out, or work through, have a call or a meeting that's going to last hours, I can skip my meal, because my body is going to tap into my fat stores, and I'm going to make it to a 6:00 dinner with the family. Right. So metabolic flexibility is more important than any of these other things, but you've got to go into ketosis at some point to be able to train your body to be a fat burner and fat adapt, like Dr. Stephen Finney has talked about. So again, tomorrow's show, Laurie Nadeau with Smoking Mary Bloody Mary Mix. I'm excited to have her on the show. And then next week, I'm going to talk about how I combine this ketogenic diet that I've talked about with intermittent fasting, and the benefits of intermittent fasting, and what styles I use. And I can talk deeper about fasting as well. No pun intended, right? Again, my name is Scott Stanfield. Thank you for paying attention and listening to this live show today about how ketogenic diet is not a 6-day challenge. And if you are struggling with your sleep, and you want to get the best sleep of your lives, or the sleep that you dream of, go to sleep.strongforlonger.com. Like this show, comment on this show, share this show with your friends, and it's here Monday through Friday. It's at 10 a.m. Mountain Time where I'm at, or 12 noon Eastern. And I'm super excited to be here live on LinkedIn, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. And if it's your Friday, I wish you a great weekend. Cheers. Here we go, the outro.